Warriors welterweight title. And of course, we know how confident Ian Garry is, and the talk from Garry this week has been that he's going to put Jack Grant out early. As we've seen from previous opponents of Grant's, that's not always the easiest task to accomplish.
The other thing you have to consider is, you know, Jack Grant's put in a solid training camp. He's been living in the gym, but he also knows what his opponent's been dealing with in his preparation. There's the head kick. Now, he mentioned this to me at the hotel. He said there's an opening in that side, on the side of Jack Grant's head for that head kick.
Yeah. Ian seeming confident in going to the ground with Grant. Currently in a top half guard position. You know, we saw him with a really strong top dominant ground and pound in a couple of fights ago. So he definitely knows what he's doing on the ground, but you'd still expect him. He's locked up a dance for a second there. Usually something that you'd expect from his opponent tonight.
Yeah, both these guys are very long for the weight class, and you know, Grant we've obviously seen fighting at lightweight before, absolutely huge for the weight class. And he still looks completely shredded at 170.
The idea of him competing at 155 is crazy. I can't believe he ever made that.
Crazy. Both of these guys are really big welterweights, though. Jack Grant jumping on the back. He's got a hook in. He could have been too overzealous with this position here.
Yeah, Garry needs to be very careful about that second hook coming in. He's got the right idea here. He can try and shift Grant off of him, but he's got to be very, very careful. When you've got someone with such long, strong legs and someone so effective at attacking from that back position, he has to be very, very careful about what's going on around his neck right now. A possible switch to a knee bar from here.
Oh, yeah. Potential Suleiman stretch. Oh, that looks fully extended. Wow, Jack Grant. Jack Grant wasn't able to finish that. Ian Garry was able to free his leg and turn his knee to a safe position. Back into a double underhook position here for Ian Garry. Good head position as well. Really aggressive with that pressure.
Yeah, that's you know, very good work from both guys there. Garry in a very tricky situation. You've got to think that's going to give him a little bit of confidence. You know, even the fact that Grant had his back for a second, Jack Grant jump in a guard position. This is something you don't see very often. You see this from people for
like
only
For
one reason: supreme confidence in their grappling skills.
Well, we know that Grant's got supreme confidence in those grappling skills, as well he might.
It's interesting to see Ian Garry continuing to fight from the clinch here. You'd expect to see him try and create some space and get back to striking range. But possibly, you know, this is something that you have to expect to a certain degree from Garry, that he's going to try and win the fight in his opponent's favored position.
Well, exactly that. Maybe trying to prove a point.
Every time we see Garry, he looks a little bit better, and he tells us that he's going to get a little bit better, and he's frustratingly accurate with those predictions. And he may have to put in his best performance. In fact, he will have to put in his best career performance if he's going to get Jack Grant out of there tonight. But from everything we've seen so far from this young man, the future is his nickname, but the future may very well be in his hands.
So what Ian Garry's looking for is the right hand of Jack Grant moving away from his chin. Ian Garry feels like he's going to be able to sneak up a kick around that side like he did a little earlier. But at this position, Jack Grant is going to be much more comfortable.
Yeah, nice shrug off a attempted takedown by Grant. Now looking to bring his man to the ground. Expect to see him try and slip out to the back if he can. That right arm of Ian Garry, very, very important in maintaining the position there. Garry sits down, looks to control the leg. Grant straight into a leg entanglement here. A possibility to attack a heel hook, but Ian Garry doing a good job of getting that left leg backwards. He wants to continue to pull that left leg backwards, get to a top half guard position, because we know he's very comfortable from there.
Look at that hip dexterity as well from Ian Garry.
Yeah, and
in a really uncomfortable position and still striking his opponent.
Yeah, but it's really going to limit how much power, and it's going to limit his ability to move. He wants to get that foot out. You can see trying to create some space to get that foot out. Now he's in this really awkward sort of inverted half guard position, which looks good, but it's actually pretty useless. Grant doing a good job of getting that leg back on the inside. He wants to try and use his left leg to create some space, get his right leg on the inside, or from here he can use his right leg to throw over the top and go back for a leg lock. But there we see he goes for the former option there, back in the butterfly guard, a much better grappling position from the man underneath. A nice attempted butterfly guard sweep, and it looks like a double underhook position, another very strong position we've spoken about to go for sweeps from butterfly guard.
Nice ground and pound from Ian Garry at the end of the first round. Oh, big shots from the future. And that's a solid first frame for Ian Garry.
Yeah, very, very nice work there. Some really nice grappling exchanges from both men. But, you know, this was the big question we had come in here. Can Ian Garry handle Jack Grant on the ground? And even though he's found himself in some tricky situations, so far, looking very comfortable there.
Let's take a look back at some of the early action from this one.
There's
Nice
the head
head kick from Ian Garry. Beautiful stuff.
He called that at the hotel. He said he recognized that opening in his game. Now the problem is, can he use it a second time? Now is Jack Grant wise to it, or did he not register it because he didn't hurt him?
Yeah, here we see that back take early on. You know, there are a few different ways of defending this, but a standard way, if you are on your feet, is to try and get your upper body low, your hips high, and shrug your opponent off. You know, shake them off over the top of you. He does manage to do that and avoids what could have been a fight-ending submission then. Here we have one of that leg, that little bit of a leg entanglement here. Garry kind of gets his foot stuck and finally manages able to get his leg back out and then really deliver some really nasty ground and pound at the end there.
Yeah, some big shots from the end of that round from Ian Garry. He goes into the second here. It's been a while since he's seen the second round. The last time was against George McManus, I believe.
Definitely the slicker striker is Ian Garry, and confident in his range as well, able to pick his opponents off. But, you know, sometimes, oh, that was a good calf kick. Nice back take from Jack Grant, though.
What a recovery there and into a really nice position. Garry needs to be very careful here. Expect to see Grant walking himself up, and expect to see a very similar defense from Garry already. Got the hips very high, the head very low. And what this does, doing this preemptively to someone taking the back, is if Jack jumps up now, he's going to find himself maybe falling off the top. We're about to see now. Is he going to fall off the top? And that is exactly what we're seeing. He's now very, very high up the body. You know, that Ian Garry defended that back take before Grant had even gone to it. You know, Grant could have maybe tried to change position a little bit, force a more suitable position before he went to take the back. Now he finds himself again in a weird leg entanglement here, similar to what we saw earlier in that 50-50 position. Possibly going to look to, you know, a much deeper position on the legs here. He could, if he wanted to, try and go for a heel hook or something like that. But Garry doing a good job of moving around and possibly with a little sniff of a back take himself there. Into a sprawl position, throwing on this Bravo, nice. He's locked it off. He does have those long arms at 6'3". The fact that he's looking to do something with his leg means that he thinks that he has that on. So, you know, could you imagine him finishing Jack Grant with a submission we're used to seeing him from? But I'll tell you what, this is very, very tight. He's sitting backwards in this position. This is extremely tight here.
This is a bad spot for Jack Grant.
And he's
finding the submission here.
He's controlling the leg here. He's stopping Jack Grant from being able to move away. The question is, how tight is that on the neck? It's very hard to know. Oh, very, very close. Very impressive setup there. But Jack Grant very cool under that pressure.
The saving grace there was that Jack Grant was able to keep his chest face to the canvas instead of turning onto his side. Had he turned onto his side, it would have dropped his own shoulder into his carotid artery. But we're seeing some real fatigue from Jack Grant here, and he's also taken a lot of punches from an advantageous position for Ian Garry while he was defending those heel hook positions.
That's always the danger with attacking the legs. You leave your head open. But Jack Grant talked about this prior to the fight. He said, look, I've been in all these bad spots before, and I know I can survive them. And he just survived one against Ian Garry there. Oh, he's going to defend the head and arm here, standing.
A standing head and arm. This is very rarely seen. We saw Jack Grant jump into a closed guard position. He is in a head and arm position here. Very hard to do anything with from the closed guard, but now as he releases, he looks to come out to the back. A very strange style. We know that Jack's got a strange grappling style already, but, you know, still throwing stuff out that we don't expect.
Yes, sometimes these moments where he's jumping on the back and jumping for guard, he's finding himself in an exposed position when he doesn't need to. If he'd been more assertive with his positioning, with his grappling, or, you know, like when he was jumping on the back previously, you know, try and lower the level of his opponent first so he's not sliding down a ramp head first when he jumps on his back.
Yeah, we see him with a Kimura grip here. You know, you see how deep that right arm of Ian Garry is into the body. It's going to make it very difficult for Jack Grant to do anything, and it could give up the back. But whilst you have this position, what you expect to see Grant do from here, I don't think he's too close to being able to do anything with it, but what you can use it for is to create some space. Garry doing a really good job of releasing that arm and getting back to a position where he can once again strike.
Jack Grant is confident he can walk through these shots.
Well, you better be careful because not everyone can walk through every shot.
But if there's a chink in the confidence of Ian Garry, this is what's going to expose it. This is a confident, tough veteran of the UK game walking him down and calling him on.
This is it. This is mind games from Jack Grant here. You know, for all of the tools that Ian Garry has, you have to say the confidence is the #1, and Jack Grant is trying to take that tool away, but so far, possibly struggling to do so, eating a lot of damage here.
Yeah, the problem is Jack Grant is still taking shots there, and it's all very good, well and good to run your mouth and try and get a bit of gamesmanship going, but when you're eating shots like this, something has to change.
Yeah, and it doesn't even matter if these shots aren't hurting, which they almost certainly are. They are very much racking up points on the judges' scorecard.
Unfortunately, you know, bravery and bravado not a scoring criteria.
If only.
Gorilla would have been the champion otherwise. I mean, this, you can kind of see that Jack Grant assumed that he was going to have to take a bit of a cooking in this fight and take a few shots and maybe get bloody. But the psychological advantage of being able to walk him down for his strongest 2 rounds in Ian Garry, it's going to bolster the confidence of Jack Grant, but he's got to do something technical behind it to make it worth something.
You know, Jack Grant's previous 2 fights were 5-round wars, right? He's coming in after going into the trenches twice.
That's a very good point.
He had some good work in those last rounds as well. Ian Garry, of course, hasn't fought past 3 and hasn't fought out of the 2nd round in a long time. So perhaps the strategy here is to get to that 3rd, 4th and 5th frame and do the damage.
Drag it into the championship rounds to see if he's got what champions are made of.
Yeah, but the problem is it looks like Grant's output is so much higher than Gary's. He's already looking more fatigued.
Yes.
So the question is he going to try and, is he going to fatigue himself trying to fatigue Ian Garry and try and bring him down to his level?
And the damage that he's wearing on his face now, you know, swelling becomes cuts, becomes doctor stoppages, and 5-round fights is much more of a narrative than it is over 15 minutes.
Yeah, and we see this this Darcis choke attempt by Ian Garry. Very, very powerful position here. A lesser grappler almost certainly would have been submitted by that.
Straight back to the action here, 3rd round. Garry still looking for that head kick.
Yeah, he's going for that snap head kick off the jab. And Jack Grant, the benefit in him staying closer is that it does nullify some of those kicks of Ian Garry. But he's got to do something on the inside. We've got to see him start landing some hands or even get his hands on Ian Garry, because Garry can do this for 25 minutes.
Well, that's it. What you expect to see with this strategy is him walking down and then change levels and go for a takedown. I don't think we've seen that at all from him yet.
There's that head kick again, he blocked it. So that's the A game plan of Ian Garry that's now not come to fruition.
You know, where's the shot now? Jack, you've got his back up against the fence. Where's the level change?
Grant really not landing a whole lot cleanly in this one. And he's wearing a lot of damage from Ian Garry's output. You know, even looking back to the time that Ian did go the full 3 rounds of his debut, he didn't look tired, he didn't look fatigued, didn't look like he was in any trouble. And of course, preparing for a 5-round fight, you've got to think that he's dialed up that side of his game plan as well. Catches Garry with a left hand there.
Yeah, did a little better covering distance there. It would serve Jack Grant to try and keep Ian Garry's back up against the fence, so when he does cover distance, it's not the same kind of distance to slip away into like we're seeing here.
Big overhand right there from Jack Grant, but it hit the shoulder. And there's a crisp shot from Ian Garry. He's bloodying up those yellow Cage Warriors gloves on the face of Jack Grant.
And if Jack Grant is indeed feeling like his attempts at titles are coming to an end, you're not going to put this guy away easily. He's not going to go away quietly into the night with a few jabs. You're going to have to do something significant to put him down. Nice left hook as well.
He's landed a couple of decent shots in this round, but the output's got to get a little better from Jack Grant. Nice teep to the midsection from Garry there.
You've got to think that there's no way Ian Garry thought that Jack Grant would be coming in with this game plan.
The big 1-2 from Garry landed there. It seemed to stop Grant in his tracks momentarily, but they're straight back to it. Grant making him miss that time.
I'm not sure exactly as I could say this is a game plan from Jack Grant. it's a solution to him not being able to get the fight to the floor, in my opinion.
But he doesn't even seem to be trying, you know, all of these opportunities where he's got Garry's back close to the fence where he could change levels and shoot, there's not even a feint of the shot there.
I mean, maybe fatigue is a part of his game plan for Ian Garry, but that's, you know, you've got to force somebody to work more than this if they're going to fatigue.
Yeah, you've got to try and manage the output. You've got to force your opponent to work hard. And right now, just walking him down, not giving him that much to think about, you know, Garry's still looking definitely the fresher of the two.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, conditioning's never even been a question for Ian Garry. It's not something we've ever even had to speak about before in his fights.
And there we go. We've been looking for it. We've been waiting for it. Finally, in the third round, we see a shot, a level change. Not a particularly well set up one, and he ends up in a clinch position. But, you know, something that we have seen earlier in this fight is him jumping guard. So could this be he just wants to get his hands on his opponent? Could we see Jack Grant actually jump a guard position here?
Got his hands together now, Jack Grant, on the far side hip.
Yeah, he's all good. Don't worry, you didn't mean it. I know you didn't. Don't worry, but...
Conversation between the two guys here.
They're going to get straight back to it there. A little word of warning for referee Machado. Grant pulling guard here.
There we go. I called it. This is a guy who is happy to get the fight to the ground. It doesn't matter if he's underneath. It doesn't matter if he's on top. But the thing is, he has to respect the grappling of Ian Garry. We've seen him already. We've seen him in other fights, but we've even seen him in this fight against Jack Grant. The damage that he can do from top position.
Oh, look at this. Oh, no. He slipped over his shoulder. He had mission control there, pulled himself up into a high guard and maybe tried to lock an arm with the triangle. But
yeah, what this high guard position does is it allows you to switch to an armbar much faster.
Oh, that looks tight.
Jack Grant's got this locked in.
No, his elbow's out.
He does.
Yeah, that was just a little bit too shallow, He finds himself in one of Ian Garry's favorite spots here where he can just posture up on the hips and drop down bombs. He switches round to a leg there just to give Ian Garry something to think about. Expect to see him try and get his legs on the inside, possibly for an X-guard position. But yeah, that high guard position you saw earlier, it does allow you to switch to an armbar much faster, but Garry just doing a good job of getting that leg out, and a little bit of showboating here, and as he finishes that round in sort of a knee shield side control position.
Yeah,
a napping knee shield.
The napping knee shield.
Garry, look, great respect between these two competitors. And the confidence of Ian Garry. You know, this was a question we had coming into this. With the things that have been going on outside the cage, is it going to take Ian Garry's head out of the game? Is it going to knock his confidence? Well, the answer thus far, no, emphatically not.
No, absolutely not. The thing that you would be lacking from a consistent corner team and coaches like he would normally have in his corner, at these moments here, where the A-game plan's not working, the tagging of the shots is not working, he's not able to put Jack Grant away. So it's the rallying, it's the regrouping, it's the planning for the later rounds. That's what Ian Garry's here, relatively on his own doing, whereas normally you would have his coaches in the corner doing it for him. See Jack Grant in the corner there with his coaches.
Jack Grant, of course, fighting out of four corners now and living out of four corners. Bed in the gym, that's the kind of dedication that champions are made of. Fourth round, we're into the championship frames here, and this is where Ian Garry hasn't been. This is where we haven't seen the future perform, and of course we have seen Jack Grant in his last two contests go into championship rounds, and he's prepared for championship fights before that even.
Yeah, and if this was part of the strategy from Jack Grant to take him into these later rounds, well, then we're going to see how that's going to play out. He's in a pretty shallow front headlock position here. Ian Garry doing a really good job of getting his hips very close. When you get your hips so close to your opponent, it takes away any space for him to lock those hands around. He needs to be careful if, you know, what Jack might want to try and do from here is actually turn off of the fence, find that space, and then be able to lock those hands. But Garry doing a good job, aware of those hands, and backs off back into striking range.
Nice low kick there from Ian Garry. Still looking considerably fresh in these championship rounds. Jack Grant still walking his man down.
One thing that we certainly expected from a veteran like Jack Grant was to test the depth of Ian Garry's game. You know, only 6 fights in his career, undefeated, of course, but you know it lacks the depth of the career that Jack Grant's had, and that's really where he can start to put pressure on here. These championship rounds are familiar to Jack Grant. That was a stinging jab from Ian Garry.
Beautiful stuff. Grant firing back though.
You know, we've also got to say, we've got to give it up to Ian Garry. So far, his grappling has been very, very impressive. You know, we haven't seen it really tested, and against such a veteran, high-level grappler like Jack Grant, he's looked very good, even at times looking like he might catch him with a submission.
Yeah, he's done a great job in neutralizing what his opponent's best at, and, you know, he's forcing Jack Grant to fight the fight in Ian Garry's range, and you know this is Ian Garry's world. This is what we know he's good at.
One thing I would like to see Jack Grant go back to is that long left hook that he used. You know, he throws it behind the jab, so he forced his opponent back up to the fence, and then he caught him a couple of times in the second round with that long left hook as he was moving towards it. Now, I think it's safe to say that Jack Grant doesn't have the speed or the power to hurt Ian Garry with one shot unless Ian Garry is perhaps moving onto that punch, and that's about a footwork and timing thing.
Very interesting to see Ian Garry shooting for a takedown there. He has to be very careful. We know how dangerous the front headlock, the guillotine, the anaconda, the Darce is from the long arms of Jack Grant.
Grant still chasing his man down, staying in Ian Garry's face, looking for that big lead left hook. And if the game plan from Grant now is to try and knock Ian Garry out, he's going to have to do a lot more.
Just a shout out, a welterweight prospect from last night, Justin Burlington's going to be watching this, feeling like he needs to get to a title shot.
That looked like a slip from Ian Garry. Deposits Grant down.
Grant immediately back to his feet and pushing Garry up against the fence here. Let's see if he's going to go for a level change. We've seen this position earlier in the fight. He's going to try and shrug him off, see if he can try and take the back again. You know, but if he does get to that back position, we know how Garry defends that back. He goes hip high, head low, and we've got to see if Jack can actually come up with a solution for that defense.
They're still talking to each other in the cage.
Ian Garry saying that was a good shot. Obviously, he did catch him. Here we go, a nice attempt to take down. Garry finishing in top position. Once again, locking off. You can tell that Ian Garry likes that Darce setup. Right now in a really nice sprawling position. Jack Grant not going to get anything from here. He's got to try and escape and move around. You can't just sit, you know, with your belly on the ground when someone's sprawled on top of you. You've got to move.
Grant again coming forward. Just under a minute left to play with in this fourth round. We've got one more to go. Should it get that far? It's looking like it might.
Jack Grant dipped his forehead into those last two jabs, almost as if he was trying to strike the fist of Ian Garry with his head. Ian Garry's starting to skirt the octagon a bit more now, almost like he's starting to find a bit of frustration with the fact that he can't put his opponent away. I mean, he's been able to land some clear shots on Jack Grant so far, and Grant's still moving forward.
Yeah, beautiful level change off the left hook there from Jack Grant. Ian Garry takes the back, gets to the position. You know, are we going to see Ian Garry try and get the hooks in and possibly go for a submission from here?
What a story that would be if Ian Garry could submit Jack Grant. There really would be no denying him at that point.
Yeah, we have a Kimura grip underneath there. Unfortunately, we're not going to see how this plays out because there's only 4 seconds left on the clock, but you know, really nice there. Couldn't quite see it from this angle. He had that Kimura locked up and he used that Kimura trap to come around to the back, but another very interesting round.
Well, we're learning a lot about Ian Garry in this fight. I'm sure he's learning a lot about himself too, and so far it's all positive, Dan.
It is. You know, he looks sharp, his footwork's good. I mean, he's relatively unscathed. You know, he's really not taking any shots. He's able to sting Jack Grant as he's moving forward. He's not able to muster enough power to really slow him down, but you know, he's putting water in the basement, he's putting money in the bank for the later rounds. And even though Jack Grant seems unfazed, he's taking these shots. And then when it comes to the grappling exchanges, Jack Grant's happy to land on the floor regardless of the position. Ian Garry is assertive in his top position. He's holding these positions and he's making his opponent pay for it. And that's where we're seeing the wear and tear on Jack Grant's face. Some of it from that standing jab and some of it from the ground and pound from being in the bottom position.
Ian Garry with his eyes on the prize. The Cage Warriors welterweight world title. Show of respect here between these two fighters. This will be a good weekend for Paul Hughes as a cornerman, right? Wouldn't it? And Garry wins here tonight. Doing double duty, of course. He was in the corner of Joe McColgan, who captured the lightweight belt last night, but Jack Grant headhunting here, and he's got to. He's got to stop Ian Garry in this 5th round.
He's got to touch him to stop him. Lovely head movement by Ian Garry, just slipping out of the way and looking for his counters as Jack Grant's overcommitting. Level change here from Jack Grant. Double underhooks for Ian Garry. Nice body lock.
Yeah, very strong position. If Garry does want to take his man to the ground, this is the position to do it from.
Well, let's fight, bro.
I've been fighting, I haven't been fucking touched.
Yeah,
They're right next to a mic because we can hear him perfectly.
Yeah, apologies for the language there.
You are, bro.
Leads to a deep in conversation. But look, this is what's going to take for Jack Grant to get back in this fight, right? He's going to be able to stand in front of Garry and hit him. And that's what Garry has been so good at not letting Grant do throughout this contest.
He looked for the Ezekiel choke again a moment ago.
Yeah, that's a very rare submission. He does have the long arms, but I'm not sure if they're quite long enough. I feel like we need to stop talking for a minute and just let them sort of commentate this fight themselves and take advantage of the mic right next to him.
We still get paid the same, right? That's fine by me.
You boys are getting paid. Strong on that body lock.
That's it. That's what you can use that double underhook position for. A scramble to the back here. We've seen this a couple of times already. He does have the option. That right leg is kind of cruising around that outside hook there. It's a nasty ground and pound. We could see Ian Garry try and jump round to the back, but instead he's trying to get an underhook on the far side. And this is, again, another position we've seen quite a few times. Jack Grant very happy to sort of invert and transition into a 50-50 guard here. So far, he's not been able to make it work for him, and I'm not sure he's going to make it work for him this time either. Just look at the hips of Ian Garry. Look what he's doing. He knows where his opponent wants to be, and he's getting his hips and his legs out of the way exactly when he needs to.
And, you know, rolling for these knee bars, if it's going to work, it's going to work in round 1, it's going to work in round 2, round 5. Such a low percentage technique, but look, it's a case of he's got to take these mad risks now.
You've got to create these opportunities at this level. You know, sneering a submission in the last, half of a round is so difficult to do. You know, they're sweaty, they're fatigued, and Ian Garry has got all the respect in the world for Jack Grant's ground game.
Sorry, Mum. I love you.
I love you too.
Feel like this. I feel terrible, sir.
You're a savage, man. Don't worry about it.
Oh, going for the knee bar again. It's Jack Grant.
I like how
a little bit of gamesmanship there.
He actually apologized for it. He said, I'm sorry for this, you're not going to like this, then rolls around for the knee bar, and almost certainly, with maybe the exception of a back attack, one of the closest submissions that he's had in this fight.
Paul Hughes screaming at Ian Garry not to get drawn into this.
Yeah, I think the actual words were, don't get drawn into anything stupid. He passes the guard with ease. Expect to see him once again. If he wants a sub, he's looking for this front headlock. He's looking for these Darcys, these anacondas with those long arms. He's got a forearm underneath the neck here. There's a very good chance he might try and sit back. If he does, look to see what he's doing with the left leg there. If he throws that leg around the back, then he's going to attack that front headlock position.
Grant's got a power forward now. He's got just over a minute to steal this fight from Ian Garry.
Oh, that was a good knee.
A flying
Cut
knee,
Ian
and he's
Garry.
bust Ian Garry open.
Don't do it again.
Referee Mark Goddard warning for grabbing the fence there. 50 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah, Ian Garry looking very comfortable in this position. He's got to know that he's up at this point. 44 seconds for Jack Grant to make something magical happen here if he wants to take this.
I mean, we've seen a rolling knee bar attempt, a flying knee.
Maybe if he doesn't apologize for it in advance, Ian Garry might not see it coming. There's a spinning back elbow out of the position there.
30 seconds on the clock. Can Jack Grant pull off a miracle, or will Ian Garry fulfill his destiny? It's a big slam from Garry. Oh, and a big shot from Garry.
And this is where Ian Garry loves to be. He loves ground and pound from this position. He forces the opponent's hips backwards. You see this awkward angle in the hips here. If Jack Grant tries to push him away from here, the legs go up, not forward. And this is where he likes to strike from. Although at this point, I think he knows it's a done deal and he's happy to call it at that.
Well, they call it a day. As you said, Dan, the fight really academic by that point. It was a great fight. It was entertaining, it was enthralling, and we certainly learned a lot about Ian Garry.
Yeah, we did, absolutely, we did. You know, he was pushed into the championship rounds by the toughness of Jack Grant, the presence of Jack Grant, you know, just too accepting of walking forward onto shots, too accepting of the bottom position.
Ian Garry wearing a bit of damage on his face from that flying knee from Jack Grant, and that's probably the most damage he's ever endured in a fight. And that's saying something at this level. All his professional fights on Cage Warriors, he's had an increasingly high level of competition. By far his toughest test tonight, and he's passed it with flying colours.
Yeah, we can see this knee bar attempt in this last round. Just very rarely do you get to hear everything that two fighters have said. Very rarely are two fighters quite as vocal with each other in the middle of the fight. And then a couple of flying knees in this final round. A very bizarre game plan from Jack Grant, but that's kind of what we expect. You know, he's a very unorthodox fighter, not just in the grappling, but in the striking as well.
But Dan, when you're 4 rounds down and you're creeping into the final seconds, you can't start game planning then. You've got to start throwing the Hail Mary.
You have, absolutely. You know, we just didn't see an adaptation in the game from Jack Grant. It was like he had a few things that might work, taking the back, you know, pulling guard, maybe working one of those heel hooks, but it just didn't work out for him. And the problem is that because he didn't work out, he didn't have anything else to fall back upon. You know, Ian Garry, he did everything he needed to win that fight. He skirted and he jabbed, he used his footwork, he defended the takedowns, he found himself in top position at every opportunity and made the most of it. It was a well-rounded performance, but it was also nice to see Ian Garry pushed to his limit in this fight. You know, he wasn't able to finish a guy like Jack Grant with that kind of toughness, and you know that's going to frustrate Ian Garry. You know it's going to make him better going forward.
Well, many of Gary's opponents previous, they've had that situation where they've looked like a deer in the headlights. Jack Grant, not that kind of fighter whatsoever, and it's certainly brought the best out of Ian Garry. So without further ado, let's throw it to our MC in the cage for one final time, Mr. Hal Chaplin, with the official decision.
Ladies and gentlemen, after 5 rounds of mixed martial arts action, we go to our judges' scorecards. Your judges score this contest 50-44, 50-45, and 50-45 in favor of your winner by way of unanimous decision and the new Cage Warriors welterweight world champion in the red corner, the future.
Congratulations to Ian. He's been through a lot.
Well,